Yes. Yes, yes, yes. You admit all. Let's see if we can change cameras. Do you only recognize that one now? That's great. I guess I'm going to have to use that one. Integrated cam. Back to the crappy cam. Sorry, guys. Spotlight. Yes. Got stuck. Bring it back to me after class so I can turn this stuff off, because otherwise it's going to broadcast everything you see. And they don't like it whenever I post everybody's grades out publicly for some reason. Figured that out. And 8:30. We wait. Bo. Avery. Oh. Brendan. So in fact, we you. Oh. No. We have misspelling that. How is that spelled? How is everyone today? Tell me what's going on in the world. Hurricane. Yes. I've seen a lot. I hopped on YouTube and they had a lot of videos from like news reporters standing out in the wind getting blown around and that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah.
Hurricanes now.
There's a second one.
Yeah. It's like
Still out in the ocean? Or is it getting close?
Adelia.
Good.
Like South Carolina right now.
Okay.
It's our moment.
I guess.
Where is it?
I don't know. I blew on it and held it away.
We don't
Okay.
know where
Let's smash it.
It looks like yellow it.
Interesting. Greece, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then no, you're still working on smoke, Greece. No, you. I just saw your name. Racy. I should remember that. You're right next to Race. Yeah, it's Avery.
Okay, so when we were looking at the statutes.
Yes.
Is that Title 21 you're looking at?
Yes,
Okay.
Title 21 has the bulk of the criminal, it'll have the criminal statutes. You'll find drug statutes in a different section. You'll find child statutes typically in a different section, traffic. What else is there? So yeah, you kind of hop around a little bit, but do your best. When it comes to that first assignment, basically what I'm looking for is effort. You know, if you go through and outline the major crimes, and I'll have a list of them. There's more than that, and depending on, you know, if there's some details that aren't present, like let's say, yeah, so-and-so's in a vehicle firing, is like, does it say exactly who's driving at that time? It's like, you can assume, is he driving, is he not? And you have other things going on too, you know, so just have fun with it is the main thing, and familiarity with how to navigate.
Hard. It's just searching all the
Yes.
words and I'm like.
Yeah, so basically what you have to do is you have to stop, and what I would suggest you do is for each, like, I wouldn't say every single sentence, because not every single sentence is gonna have a crime in it, but with sentences where you have a crime, pull it out. Kind of look at it, okay, what does this sound like? Does this look like a, driving under the influence? And if you want, you could even hop into like Google and say drunk driving statutes or intoxicated driving statutes in Oklahoma, and you'll pull up things like Cornell. There's a few others. Was it, there's another one that comes up a lot. I can't remember the name, but it's like, it's good to use that kind of help you identify where to look. Go to the statutes themselves, cite the statutes. Sort of like, when you guys are, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. You guys ever had to do lit reviews for paper in any of your classes? Literature review, you ever had to do that before? Well, we'll talk about that then, because it'll help you with your other classes. All right, so who came in that I didn't see? Stefan. I'm going to pronounce that Stefan. Hopefully that's the way that's pronounced. It could be Stephen, but I like Stefan because I was a big fan of Steve Urkel back in the day. If you guys, some of you get that reference. Okay, good. You got Taylor Jones. I wrote that name down already. No, I wrote that down yet. Taylor Jones. All right. Name.
Oh, Hunter.
Hunter. Seems familiar. Hunter. All right. So if you ever have to do a lit review for a class, if you haven't done that, that kind of surprises me a little. Well, I guess this is an interest, so it's not all that surprising. As you move into your upper level classes, you'll have more literature reviews in this discipline and in others too. Here, typically what we're talking about is you'll hop on the library's website, use their articles and databases. Do you guys know what I'm talking about whenever I say that? Some of you, yes. A lot of people staring down and giving me a look like, I'm not sure if this is stupid or if that's, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes. 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 Academic journals are what you should use for any paper you ever write. Right. Sometimes it's okay to bring in like news stuff and that kind of stuff. It's really good to bring it in because you can see what's going on. And sometimes it'll link you into other issues. But when it comes to writing lit reviews, basically a literature review is a synthesis of existing research on whatever topic that you're writing, right? So that's different what you'll do from what you'll do in here. Like other content related classes, they'll typically have you do a lit review at some point where it's like, okay, there's a topic you're interested in, right? Go look that topic up, find all the research you can find about it, read it all, and then boil down the parts to, what resources are important, what are the debates, what are the major issues, what are the, the things that we use to explain whatever issues are taking place. And you try to bring it all together into one place where you can say, okay, here's 5 pages. It'll basically summarize most of the research that's being done on this topic. Like if I said, recidivism, something like that. It's like, that's an easy topic to look at. That's Cortez. Very, very brief, very boiled down to just what what you need to know related to that topic. That's a lit review. 5, 10, 30 pages. If you get like some of the graduate stuff, they get longer. That's a lit review. In here, it's a little bit different. What you have to do is you have to be able to cite cases and that kind of stuff. And I'll have you do that in some of the assignments. Basically, it's the same kind of thing. You have to stop, you have to read it, and you see the different cases that it cites. Sometimes you have to track those down. It's the same general concept. Whenever you cite anything, you should cite the original source. You should never say something like, well, Jacoby says that Beccaria says that this. That's the second cite. Same thing in here. It's like you cite, was it Ovia or something like that? Not Ovia. It's something Ia at the end. Justia, that's what it is. That's another one commonly gets quoted. It's like, don't cite them. Go cite the statutes or the case itself, because that's where the information actually is. If you're telling me that so-and-so said that so-and-so said this, that's the same thing as a rumor mill. Like, it doesn't do anything. Same thing here with this. Whenever we read cases, They are very. I don't have any reading materials in here. Maybe I should have grabbed the book and brought it in here. Maybe I'll do that next time. Big thick book. It'll have a few cases in it. Basically, what you need to know is that any issue will have a few leading cases and a whole bunch of supporting cases. We've talked about the word precedent before. Yes. Right. I can't remember your name off the top of my head, but I'm working on it. Landon. There we go. Landon. Okay. I don't know if I got you two in the back. Give me your names one more time. Yeah. Elizabeth. Laney. I didn't write either of your names down. Do you go by Elizabeth or you go by something else? Okay, Liz. Because my memory is so short. Did you say Laney? Okay. Laney. Let's see if I find it. I'd like to see the picture here too. There you are. You're very first on the list. Excellent. All right. So I was saying, precedent. Right? We talked about precedent. I'll turn that a little bit. Sorry, we're using the crappy camera again over here, guys. For some reason, the one in the back stopped working, which maybe it'll help you. I don't know. I don't like the quality of it, but so precedent. We were talking about that when we were talking about case law, right? When I was telling you about this, it's something every case builds into this overall system. It's just some cases are noteworthy, some cases are just standard run of the mill. Another word that you'll need to know. Stare decisis, more Latin. I only, in the last couple of years, found out that was pronounced stare. I did not take law classes, I just read a lot. So pronunciation is not always my strong suit. Stare decisis. Any idea what this means? That second word should stand out to you pretty easy. Decision. Stare. Close. If you saw this word by itself, don't pronounce it stare. What's it look like? Stare. What do you do when you stare at something? Yeah. You look to your previous decisions. You stand on your previous decisions. That's what that is. So that's the Latin term for essentially the same thing that we're talking about. Right? You're talking about precedents. You're talking about case law. Which means anytime that you do that, you need to be able to cite something, right? What would be a good example? Last time when we were in here, I mentioned the case. I'm going to share my screen. Is that the screen I want? Yes. Share. Don't you try to get away from me. Okay, Control T. That's not a symbol. Control T. We're going to say, okay, this is a good resource to use if you want to find cases that are a little bit easier to find than using the Supreme Court's website. If you've never seen the Supreme Court's website, this is very useful too. Okay. It's got opinions, filings, rulings. This is where you can see what's going on with the justices. You know, what kind of court cases are going up on the docket, that kind of stuff. All right, so we're going to say opinions of the court. Here, year 22, 21, 29. See earlier opinions. Okay. You could find any of these. You look at older ones. This would be the next year, right? Oh, same year. And so each of these cases will do something. If they're being heard by the Supreme Court, they're setting some type of precedent, right? Anytime you have a case, there's usually a few different ways things go related to precedent. The first one, there you just stand on the previous decision, just make sure it lines up. If it's a very, very rarely do cases get overruled. It does happen. Supreme Court is very, very rare. Usually what you'll see is that Every now and again, get something's overruled. Most things will align. Every now and again, you'll see something that distinguishes a case. So there's some facet of this case that distinguishes it from the way things have already been decided, right? Or there's something new or something novel that they need to address. That's why you have to keep up with this stuff. But if I said, you know, maybe it's an older one, like, well, I should go back down page up. So you can see earlier ones, and it says volumes, right? So anytime you look up a case, scholar.google.com. This is a good place to find them very, very quickly, right? You set of articles, you say case law, you want Oklahoma or federal? Well, I'm going to leave it brown. I'm going to leave it blank. I'm going to say, what was that? Was Furman versus Georgia. That was a case that came up last time I was talking about retribution, right? You click into it, and it'll actually show it here. This is your citation right here. It's Furman versus Georgia, 408 US 203. Sometimes they'll put the year right at the end. That's how you decide it. So that's the same thing as saying 408. Okay, scroll down here. So years. This only goes back to, say, 91. So you only go back to 502. So you'd want to look older. Let's see. Digital online collections for earlier volumes. That's where you want to go for that. Right. Find that volume. That's the volume. This is a US case, so that tells you what court. If you're looking at state courts, it'll say Oklahoma, or it'll say something else there, right? That's the actual page number that it starts on. So if I said 408, I hopped over to this one in a long time. So let's see if I can find that by volume. It was 408. 408 US 238. Okay. Looks like these are not in any particular order. Let's do this. F238. There we go. Boom. So these used to be bound. You can actually still get bound versions of they're not as common anymore. But if you turn to that page, that would be the actual page. View enlarged image. See, 408 US, page 238 is where it starts. You got the year on there, so you know what year it is. You got everything you need to cite it. When you actually look at it, here's what it will tell you. Sometimes it'll give you a little bit of a outline of the case. If I were to go over here and say, that one, not that one. Maybe I think I closed out of it, moved out forward. Okay, it'll tell you, okay, what it's about. Here's a little bit of history of what's happened with the case. And then it will give you details. They argued this case, such and such, per curiam. Here's where it gets in the actual details. Petitioner, such and such, was convicted, such and such, and it goes on through. And then here's the question. Does the imposition carry out the death penalty in these cases? Cruel and unusual punishment. Court holds it. It did constitute it. Therefore, leaves death sentence imposed, but they're remanded for further proceedings, meaning go back to court, right? If I were to go over here and say, we'll say, Bank, we'll go back to their website. Okay. Back one more. Oh, it's current opinions. Let's see. What would be a good one? I'm trying to remember if any of these pop out in my head. If I were paying closer attention, I'd probably have a specific name in mind. Ooh. A lot of social media stuff. Pick this one. Oh, that's just a Simonelli, 306. Petitioner is convicted of wire fraud for his involvement in a scheme to rig a bid process for extending the state. Yeah, that's interesting. at trial, they relied solely on such and such. They note the statutes that they're going to charge that person under, so you could look those up. Here's the holding. Because the right. Okay. You have the holding, and then if you're dealing with Supreme Court cases, every now and again, unanimous or split decision. If there's a split decision, well, we'll say, if there's unanimous, usually you'll have affirmations where other judges may come in and they'll give you some language and some reasoning for why they decided the way they did. If it's not a unanimous decision, they'll give you the dissenting opinion, meaning the argument for the other side. That's very, very helpful whenever trying to understand things. With some of the stuff, when you get to the technicality of it, you can see here, it's like, okay, for each item that they deal with, it's too much, roll back a little bit. Okay, you're dealing with specific elements of this crime and then how they've been decided, how they're constituted, right? When the wire fraud statute was enacted, common understanding of the words to defraud was referring to one's case citation right there, where it's specifically in print, right? So if you had a case that dealt with, we're going to ask questions about the legality of this law, whether it stand the way it is, you might want to start here, right? Another way to think about it. Oh, I may have already said this actually. If I said, you're a lawyer, what are the things that you argue? What should you argue if you're a lawyer taking the case? Facts, law, and character, right? Facts are in your favor, you argue the facts. The law is in your favor, you argue the law. Neither in your favor, you argue character. You've heard me say that before? Not in here? No? Okay. That's how you do it. Whenever we're talking about witnesses, the whole reason we have character witnesses. If I can get you to hate this person enough, maybe you'll convict him if it's not set to reasonable standard, reasonable doubt. Say, we're close, where you make that leap the rest of the way. Right? Usually what you want to do, though, is argue the facts or argue the law. Okay? Juries decide this. We talked about that already. Right? Judge decides this. We also have the jury has to interpret this to know whether the facts there align with the law. We're starting to build into elements of law, which is my favorite discussion here. We're moving into that here in a moment. And so that's how you do that. You look to cases that have already been decided, what their major holdings were. And it's not immediately easy to be able to access this information. You have to know where you're looking. You have to know what you're looking for. The only way you do that is by reading. Right? Some of that stuff I'll bring into class and I'll point out and be like, okay, so if I said we're talking about this crime here, we'll say, I think we may have talked, no, that was a different class. Say a sex-based crime. What's the difference between molestation and rape? And then, what's the difference between, we'll say, did this molestation occur? Well, we got the facts. We got how the law is written. Do those facts align with how that law is written? What kind of touching do we need to take place? Does it need to be a certain area? Does it just need to be, is it written to where I'm a guy, this is a girl, and that's the way it works? Or is it something where it's I'm a guy, this is a guy, that's a girl, that's a girl? Is it something to where I can have to list, certain specific areas? Is it any touching whatsoever could be sexual? How do we determine that? I mean, we'll get to that when we get to sex-based crimes, but right now, what are your guys' thoughts? If we're talking sexual molestation, can that happen anywhere on someone's body, or are we talking about specific areas? Okay, got intent and specific areas. So, say molestation. If I grab someone by their genitals, that's molestation, yes? Okay, once I grab them by the hips. Yeah, there's just some lady out over there in the hall, and I walk up to her, grab her by both hips, and I grab her, and I don't touch her with any other part, I grab her by the hips, but I pull her closer.
Yeah.
No, that's maybe. Right? You start getting that, we're gonna start arguing that, right? And that's the whole purpose of this. Okay. Not always easy to do. A lot of reading is going to be involved, particularly on the front end as you start figuring out what cases are important, what cases aren't. If you get heavy into this, we won't get too heavy into the cases themselves in this class. This is more about statutes than case law, but some interpretation of those statutes will be found here. Okay. Stop share. I think we're good on that. Did I pull up? Maybe I didn't. I don't think I did. Do my checklist real quick. Introduction to criminal laws or anything we need to talk about here. Grade of offense, ex post facto, right to privacy. We talked about that. Proof. I remember we were talking about proof whenever we left. That's what we're talking about now. How to read and interpret a case. That's what we're looking for. I think I may have listed out here. I may give you some more information on it. So you have the little abstract section, you have the details of the case, you have the history of all the cases that deal with each of those issues, eventually get to the holding, and then you'll have the justification for that, and then any affirmations or dissent. Okay. We talked about burden of proof. That's largely on the prosecution, save for the defense when it's an affirmative defense. I mentioned that last class. I gotta know. Okay. We'll start there then. Okay, so these are the things that typically get argued. We talk about the politics stuff. Usually we're talking about this. It's whenever I mention indicted, it's like anytime you hear it mentioned, whether it's big rich guy in big city or anything else, it's like they'll use that term. That's this, it's some type of character. Is it justifiable? Usually, if you find a probable cause from a crime, it's more than likely they did it. So, there's some reason for that. We had courtroom actors. Big ones for this one were judge, prosecution, defense. You can say jury. Okay, we mentioned judge covers law. Prosecution, they carry the burden for, you could say, at least probable cause, but really reasonable doubt. We'll come back to that. Defense, they don't carry a burden at all unless it's an affirmative defense, meaning that you're putting forward some type of argument that usually you're talking about excuses, right? Yes, I robbed the bank, but I'm not guilty because I was under duress. This criminal organization abducted one of my children, holding them hostage until I provided them $1.5 million. I did that. Yeah, that's a solid defense. If I can show that, I'm good. This will have a lower level standard than this, right? So prosecution needs to establish reasonable doubt to get conviction. Here, essentially more than likely is what you're dealing with. I want to say, it's a clear and convincing evidence. There's a couple standards that are used, but they're basically you're just barely over that, more than likely. If you can establish that, that's good. You don't establish probable cause here, like if you can't on its face have enough to say that if the defense doesn't go, the prosecution will get a conviction. So basically, you're over here. If they haven't moved that direction by the time they rest their case, guess what happens to that case? You have a motion for a summary judgment. The judge will be like, you did not make your case. Dismissed with prejudice. That's what happens there. They don't make their case. One motion, case is over. Right? Here, they don't have that burden, probable cause. Here, they're to find facts, and they also interpret law to some degree. Facts are important. Mentions here. Judge also does this if it's bench trial. Okay. The main thing is that it's error-free, not that it gets the right outcome. Adversary, we already talked about that. Appellant, we already talked about that. Bill of attainder, That's within your constitutional rights. You can't be convicted without a trial. If I said terrorist being held without being charged. Okay, that's not unlimited. There are definitely limitations on this right here. You're not supposed to be condemned before trial. Do we? How many people have sat in prison or in jail for longer than a year without a trial? How many people who've gotten the label terrorist will be in there for years and never have a trial? That's both foreign and domestic. Okay. Burden of proof, we already talked about. Case law, we already talked about. Civil law, codified. We already talked about common law, crime, criminal law, discretion, dual system, due process, incapacitation, judicial review. We didn't talk about that. It's here. Process when appellate courts review and interpret the acts of lower courts. Basically, that you have the ability to have your case, you can appeal, is essentially what that is talking about. Maybe upheld, altered, reversed, or remanded. Upheld means it stands, altered means it changes, reversed means the person's free to go. Remanded means they make a decision on the issue and send it back to the lower court for them to finish out the case. Talk about that. Misdemeanor, mistrial, procedural law, rehabilitation. All right. The only thing I didn't talk about was treason. Do we need to talk about treason? Okay. Good. Next, do I have a second one in here? I do. Elements of a crime are very, very, very simple. Let's pull this up. What they mean, though, is more than you will ever realize. I'm gonna move them back here so I can see them while I move forward. Now, if you've all taken intro, I assume. And I actually had this talk in intro a little bit earlier, but not to the same degree or same direction. Some will give you more elements than what I have listed here. The intro book does, many other things will. And I'll talk about that after I go through what we have here. So you need to have an act, intent, lists out correlate or concurrence, causation. I think the intro book also threw in they had harm and punishment, but those are kind of understood here when we talk about things. So understood, you don't need to specifically spell those out, and I'll show you how that works. Those are the big ones right here. Which leads me to the question of the day. We're almost half an hour into class. It's a little late for the question of the day. Can you be criminally responsible for something you didn't do? Yes, no. And I don't mean you're getting you're being held responsible for someone else's actions. So this isn't like you're being framed. Can you be held criminally responsible for something you didn't do? Raise your hand if you think no. Raise your hand if you think yes. Good. I don't have to explain that to you. Great. That is awesome. I just realized I don't have that chat up in this thing. Usually it'll pop up if anybody said anything. You guys need to say anything online. Do so. You can also come up with the speakers, which is cool too. So yes, there's all kinds of reasons you can be held responsible for something you didn't do. What do you guys mean by that?
You can do something that leads to someone else
Okay.
committing a crime.
Yeah, that's liability. That can pass through people.
Like a failure to act.
Omissions, that too. There you go. So sometimes if we incite something, yeah, you can be held responsible. You're inciting it, you should be. Right? If you were supposed to do something and you didn't. They got you there too. Where's a good example of that? Doctor, yeah. Yeah, go in there, let's say, real story. I can't remember what happened with those a number of years ago. Lady goes to the ER. She sits in the ER waiting room for 12 hours, during which time she's coughing up and vomiting up blood. Eventually she dies on the floor in the hall. She's had a heart failure, is what happens. Because her heart wasn't working, sending blood to her lungs, and while she was coughing up blood. So she died, right? Yeah, you got some criminal charges right there. You should have been helping her. She's right there next to you. Anybody walking by can see what's going on. You guys are fucking around. Yeah, you need some charges there. Okay, what else?
Going to your court date.
Okay. Skipping the government required things. Yes. If there's any type of thing that you are subpoenaed for, that's a crime. If you court appearance, you don't show up, yeah. What else?
Miss jury duty.
Miss jury duty, you can get in trouble for that one too. If I say good Samaritan,
So like not trying to help whenever someone's like having a heart attack or something like that, and you're, let's say you're certified CPR and you don't try.
yeah,
Try to save it.
yeah. So states sometimes have good Samaritan laws. It can be a whole range of things, whether it's a broken down person at the side of the road, someone who's actually in emergency or distress. It's like there might be situations where you were responsible and you were required to act. Failing to do so will make you responsible. All kinds of stuff. So this act isn't just act. It's sometimes failure or causing other people to take actions, or so there's all kinds of ways to go about it. Okay. Let's see. I don't want to get into intent just yet, but we'll get there. Okay. So answer is yes, but the caveat. Roll question mark. Is it a choice?
You choose to not act.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with a different situation. Let's say I am driving down the road. Sounds familiar to what I was telling my intro people. And I run somebody over while I'm driving down the road. I give all kinds of reasons why to run somebody over. Okay, running. Someone walked across the road. I don't purposely run them over. It's not something I meant to do. But we'll say 50 yards before I'm close to that person, I start having a seizure. Right? I have a seizure, and that's why I'm not really responsive. Vehicle just kind of goes right into this person, kills him. Am I responsible for that?
Possibly.
Okay.
If you knew you were having frequent seizures or you probably shouldn't get behind the wheel.
Did you know you have an issue with seizures? Yes. So you knew in all likelihood that there was a good possibility that you were going to be out driving when you had that's why a lot of people have seizures like epilepsy. They can't get a driver's license. You have to go so many years without a seizure before they'll let you have one. Is it a choice? Sort of like drinking and driving. Well, I drove to the bar with the purpose of getting drunk. I did not drive to the bar with the purpose of getting drunk and driving home. I did make that decision while I was drunk, though. Am I still responsible for it? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Other things that are acts. Okay. Yep. Things that you didn't do, things that you did do. See, it mentions here possession as an act. Right. What would you be in possession of that could be criminal? Drugs, my favorite. Yeah. Yeah. If you got an open tank, that's another one. Basically, when you start getting into the possession stuff. I think I like what procedures kind of talk about that. It's, you're possessing something that you have no possessory interest in. I mean, it's not something you're legally allowed to possess, and that's why it's illegal. So it's that you decided to hold on to it in the fact with the surrounding circumstances that it is illegal. All right, so that's failure and possession. I covered acts. Acts are pretty straightforward. That's where I left it. I'm walking around a lot. Okay. Intent. What do we mean by intent?
Thing you're trying to do, your purpose of acting.
And everything.
Okay. Motive isn't the same thing as intent. It is very, very close, though. Motive are all the reasons you would have to commit an act, right? You have a multi-million-dollar insurance policy. There's a multi-million reasons why you would commit this act, right? It's not the same thing, but if you can have a strong showing of this, the jury can make that jump. Say that this, all the other evidence goes there. Right? So it's not the same thing, but it does go a long way. Yeah, here's really what you're talking about. What were you trying to do when you did X? Whenever this happened, where were you? You know, here. Really hard to prove that, isn't it? This one, usually not so hard. I mean, if you've got a murder that's taken place, you know, that's where you'd put harm. You'd have a body, you'd have, you know, something like that. If you're talking about a beating, hey, look, this person's got bruises and bloody spots on them. Like, yeah, there's your evidence that shows that this act took place, right? Sometimes it's very tangible, sometimes it's not. I said, you say treason, you can say conspiracy, you can say anything like that. Those are largely in here, right? Harder to prove this. This is all in here. There are no windows into anyone's mind. There's nothing that will give you 100% evidence of anything save a confession, and those are not common. Despite what you see, they're not common. So how do you know if something exists, it's not physically written? Well, I'll have a conversation about levels then. Okay. What different types of purpose could you have in taking an action? What different types of intent do you have when you do something? Okay. Somebody name off something they've done within the last 24 hours. Drove here. Okay. Didn't hit anybody, did you? Okay, good. Been any other crimes? Good answer. Answer is no. Only what you can prove. You didn't catch me. It never happened. You drove here. Proof. Drove here. Okay. You chose to get in the car. You started the car, put it in gear, took off. Whenever you first started coming here, was this your only destination? Yeah. Okay. So, as you were driving here, you would say that you came here on purpose? Okay. Purposeful. Right? If I said the phrase desk pop, does anyone know what I'm talking about? A couple of you, okay? What am I talking about?
Shooting a gun in the office.
I'm talking about Will Ferrell, right? Yes. It's a thing. You get your first job as a police officer. First thing you do, your first day, you hit the 7 gun off while you're inside the station. It's just normal. You do your desk. Desk pop. Yeah. I forget where I was. Oh, no, it was going. Okay. Those actually frequently occur. People's guns going off. That is often referred to as a discharge. What kind of discharge is that? Oh, we got two right there. Accidental and then negligent. Again, people, what's the difference between the two of those things?
One's stupidity, one's accident.
Yeah, one is stupidity. That one. The other one, something's wrong with your gun. Like that can happen. There's say Remington. When they first started coming out with their crossbolt type rifles or cheaper line of rifles, they'd actually break, and sometimes taking off the safety would cause the firing pin to drop on the live round. Yeah, so to put off your safety, you have to put off your safety before you unload the type of rifle it was. Sometimes putting the safety on or taking it off would cause it to go off. That's accidental. You're nowhere near that trigger. People died from that too. Like that shit. That's shitty. That's not your fuck up. That's the manufacturers. Here, you can have things that happen accidentally. Really, you're talking here. We talk about this one really isn't one. Here, negligent. You should have known the risks. You did it anyway. You just weren't thinking. Accidents can happen. That is not this. That is not intent. Now, when is the most likely time to be shot with your own gun?
Unholstering.
Unholstering? Yeah. That's a very common. When else?
Concealed carry.
Cleaning, concealed carry, carrying it. So basically, the more time you have around one, the more likely it is that it'll go off. This is true. But yeah, so that happens a lot. Now that's a lot different than, let's say I'm cleaning my gun and I didn't check the chamber after popping it and I had to pull the trigger as part of the assembly thing. It's like, yeah, your gun goes off, you shoot yourself in the hand. Pretty stupid. Could you get a crime for that? You're the one who's harmed so really hard. But if let's say you shot, your friend who's over visiting, maybe, right? That's a lot different than look at my new gun, guys. You see it? It's really nice. Now, if you saw someone doing something like that, or that's not the same thing as negligent, is it? Waving a gun around, pointed at all of you. What is that? It's a whole different level of stupidity, right? It's like, that's not just like your normal stupidity. That's really, 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 really bad. That's reckless, right? It's not just that there's some level of danger. It's like what you're doing is introducing the danger, that kind of thing. Negligent, reckless. Knowing and purposeful. Change between these two, right? Here's something stupid happened that you're responsible for. You're doing something stupid. You know it's stupid. It happened. This one's different. How's that one different?
To do it with the knowledge that something bad is going to happen.
You know that you're not just acting as a dumbass. You know that this is where this is gonna inevitably end up. You did it anyway, right? So it's not the waving the gun around, it's the ooh. What was a viral video that went around recently? It's a gun thing. I'm gonna run with that one because it's really good for this stuff. It's very, very easy to identify. Guy was playing with a gun, had I think it was a Russian, one of their 38s. Got a little decocker on it. A decocker, what it is, instead of a safety, sometimes they do both. It has a hammer on it, so you got gun here. There's where the bad decisions come out. Right, so gun here, you got a little hammer here. I'm not an artist, you can probably tell that, right? Hammer here, you pull trigger, hammer drops, sets off, round goes out. A little lever here. You press it, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Hammer will drop. But it won't set off the round. A viral video going around shows a guy, I think it's Russian, playing with a gun, puts it to his head. Russian roulette with a semi-auto is never a wise idea. But that's what he does. He pulls out this little to his head, drops the hammer. Doesn't have his finger. It looks like he's got his finger on the trigger, but it doesn't pull the trigger. He's showing his friends this. Hand it off to his friend. Guess what his friend does?
Pulls the trigger.
Pulls the trigger. Right? Let's say that you can establish that he had a reason to kill this guy. Maybe you start getting there. Maybe. No. Maybe. You know exactly what you're doing when you do it, though. You're trying to cause that outcome to occur. Here, you're not trying to cause that outcome to occur. Here, you're exerting your influence. A bit more. Right? Like, you know, this is an outcome. You're doing it with this intent, this sole purpose. Beyond that, you have the old premeditated. Right? You guys know what premeditated is. Yes? What is it?
There's a plan.
Planning for.
Yeah. So accidents happen very often whenever you're cleaning your gun. I'm gonna invite my friend over. I'm gonna lay out my cleaning supplies. I'm gonna shoot and kill him when he gets here. I'm gonna say it was a gun accident. Now you're planning it. Right? We're talking about murder and all in those examples. So we range all the way from what would be, I think, vehicular manslaughter up here, all the way up to premeditated murder. Punishments for those, are those get more serious or less serious as you start moving up? Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Got 3 minutes. Okay. Abstract general principle for life. Intent. Right? If I'm going to establish this stuff in court, how do I do it? I'm going to show you dead body. Identify how that person died. I'm going to identify the circumstances that point to this person. I'm going to start pointing out their motives, their reasons for doing so. Right? We'll worry about next time. I do that. If I'm investigating, it's the same thing. Police officer called out to the scene. There's a dead body here. Okay, how did they die? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, do that. Who did it? I don't know. Let's find out. We're investigating. When you actually do it in real life, that comes first. We always work these things backwards. In real life, this is what drives this, right? The more, the better aligned you have this with your actions, the more serious the consequences, right? The better aligned you are, the more sizable the outcome. It's almost like if you align your intent with your actions for a specific purpose, You make out like a bandit if you do it right. What do I mean by that? This is the negative side. This lesson is so important and stationed into the law. I repeatedly told you guys, no one's contacting me about extra work for free. It's the same damn thing. You line up your intent, education, skills, future. I want to have a solid future. I then take the appropriate steps. And it magnifies the outcome that I get. Every single thing you'll ever do in life. You can do things by floating. You can do things without giving a shit. You can do things and have an idea of where you're going, or you can do it with that specific thought in mind and take the steps you need to get there and make it as easy as possible. It's going to involve work. That's today's lesson. Criminal elements? You're fine. Criminal elements? Right there. The elements for everything you do in life. Also, right there. Use it. Use it wisely. Don't just find yourself on this side. Find yourself applying this lesson in all that you do. You will make out like a fucking bandit. I am not joking. How do you think I got here? That lesson. All right, with that, I will let you guys go. We'll finish with concurrence and causation next class. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye.